If you're someone who struggles with chronic foot pain, or maybe you're an athlete who's run into some foot issues during your training sessions, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Tina, a nutritionist, certified personal trainer, and coach of nearly 2 decades. As a competitive athlete, I had my world turned upside down when I got diagnosed with a series of rare, debilitating medical conditions: MALS, median arcuate ligament syndrome, and EDS, or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which essentially means I get injured a lot and have had to master the ability to bulletproof my body so that I've also been able to help hundreds of others bulletproof theirs. And I can now give you the tools that you need to fix your body and get back to, well, living your life. I want to teach you a couple of really basic self-assessment tools that you can utilize when problems arise to help you move that dial forward to determine whether or not you need to go see a physical therapist. We all need to have that first line of defense, especially considering how long it can take to even get to the first physical therapy appointment. And oftentimes, once we figure out where you're having some limited mobility, where those compensation patterns are stemming from, we can address the issue before you even get to that point where you need to go to the physical therapist. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the first thing I always recommend when somebody is struggling with their feet is to make sure you're in the proper footwear. That's numero uno. And so if you can get to a running store that does gait analysis, have them do a gait analysis, try a couple of different pairs of shoes, make sure you're in the right shoes for your needs. Whether you're a runner, you're somebody who's just walking, you're going to the gym, the shoes need to fit the end goal, they need to fit the activity, and they need to fit your feet. I used to be a huge minimalist person. I mean, we're talking the 5-finger barefoot shoes. I ran in them, swore by them for a long time, and have been a big supporter of that movement. However, as I have struggled with flat feet, very, very flat feet, I have a completely collapsed arch on this left side when I let things go. And so it's really important that I stay vigilant so that I don't end up with problems, because I am an endurance athlete. And anyways, my views on this have changed over time. And so I want you to look at my feet. When I stand here flat, I'm gonna angle the camera down here because I want you to see this. If you look at my ankles, okay, you're gonna see how my ankle here collapses inward. Okay, completely collapses inward, and I hope you see that. And my feet have a tendency to turn outward, which tells me that, especially on this left side, I have a collapsed arch, which means that my foot is super prone to be overpronated, which just means that my foot likes to lean along the inside, okay? This inside part of my foot, that's where naturally I like to hang out. And so with my footwear choice, I have to make sure that whatever I put on is gonna help to correct that. Because what happens to me, as I let it go, or if I run and I'm not in the proper footwear, what happens is I get stress fractures along the outside of my foot. I've had it happen. I've had it take me out of competitions before. This past fall, I was training for a half marathon and I ended up with stress fractures and issues along that lateral foot, lateral ankle on that left side. And I've had to be very diligent in figuring out, what do I need out of a shoe? How can a shoe help to stabilize me? And I went and had a gait analysis done, and I'm now in Hoka's. I used to wear Vivo barefoot shoes. I also went through Altra shoes. And that's not to say that there's any one best brand of shoe. There's just the best brand for you and your foot. So I'm gonna put my Hoka's on, and I want you to see the difference in my ankle. All right, so now you can look at my ankle in a Hoka. All right, and you can see how now my ankles are really pretty neutral. I'm in a nice stable position, and as I walk, my ankles aren't collapsing inward. And that's exactly where you want to get to with your shoe choice. So again, Hoka's are the best choice for my feet when I'm running or when I'm having stability issues. However, if I'm doing a workout where I'm training my feet or maybe I'm lifting, I'm gonna wear a more minimalist shoe so that I can really feel the ground with my feet and strengthen my feet in different ways. So without further ado, let's dive into assessment. So the first thing we want to look at is ankle mobility. Really easy test for you to do at home. And you just want to get in front of a stable surface. Usually a wall works really well. And you're going to make a fist with your thumb coming out like so. So I've got the line here on the pad of my thumb is against my pointer finger. And with that fist, this gives me about 5 inches, and I'm gonna put it at my big toe, okay? You don't wanna wear shoes for this. So big toe, tip of my thumb is on against the wall or the box that you're using. And from here, I wanna keep my ankle flat against the ground, and I'm gonna push my knee forward. And if my knee touches the wall, then that's a pass. My ankle mobility on that side is pretty good. For me, my issues tend to be on the left. I work pretty hard on them, so they're much better than they used to be, but I keep this heel flat, and it's a little harder for me to get that clear on this side. And what I want you to know is whether you feel that tension at the front of the foot or here along the calf, or do you feel both? If you feel most of that tension here along the calf, then you know you've got a limitation through your calves, okay? Your calves are tight. Maybe we're having a weakness here in the anterior tibs that is limiting that, what we call dorsiflexion, which is where we've got our toe pulling up, and we want to have between anywhere from like 10 to 22 degrees here, if not up to 30 in some cases with certain athletes. But you want to at least have 15 to 20 degrees of dorsiflexion to know that you have full functional range of that ankle, especially if you're an athlete. 10 degrees can be enough if you're just somebody who's walking and you just need really basic mobility, but a little more is not a bad thing. So from here, once we know whether we've got a limitation more here in the front, which is going to indicate that we've got, there's a bone here called the talus. And if it doesn't glide the way that it should, we can get this locked up feeling right here at the front. So depending on where you're feeling that limitation, one or the other or both, we're gonna do some exercises to help that mobilization along, that mobility along. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a couple of exercises depending on which of those you feel. Hey, if you're loving this video, do me a favor, comment below and let me know what foot issues are you currently struggling with, or what has helped you the most in overcoming your foot issues. And then I want you to tap that notification bell and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my future content. All right, if you're somebody who feels that limitation more in your calves, in the back here, then I really love this exercise. So I'm gonna get in front of a wall, or you could use a chair, but I prefer a wall. And you wanna get into this split stance. You wanna get into a relatively intense stretch in that rear calf. And from here, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go into a slow, controlled calf raise. So I'm elongated, and from this position, I am going to come up nice and slow, up onto this big toe, really focus on that big toe, and then back down into that stretch. Nice and slow up, and nice and slow back down. And you'll want to do relatively high rep. So like 15 is a pretty good place to start. Really making sure that you're getting back into that stretch. Okay? Now, if you're feeling that limitation more at the front of the ankle, here's a great exercise for that. So to help the talus bone glide a little bit better, I like to use a band and a box or a bench, and we're gonna do a mobilization with that band. So I'm gonna get the band set up along my ankle. You want it to be pushing down, okay? So I've got the band against my ankle, but it's pressing down on my foot, not back against my ankle or against my shin, okay? And you can even use your hand to help that. And what's gonna happen is this band is gonna help that talus to glide more efficiently, okay? So I've got this blocked, and I'm gonna push my knee forward, and I'm gonna come in and out of that. Like so. And anywhere from 10 to 12 is a pretty good place to start. And then once I've been through whichever mobilization is more appropriate for what's happening with my ankle, with my foot, then I'm gonna go into a reassessment, make my fist, get the right distance from my stable surface, and I'm gonna check. And I went really easily into that clear once I went through both of those exercises, because that tends to be my compensation pattern, is a little bit of both. And from there, what I want to do is I want to get into some strength exercises that you can also do to get this issue to correct over time, so that that mobility doesn't become a limiting factor in other things as well. Because that ankle mobility can also come into play when we're looking at squat mechanics, when we're looking at running and other athletic endeavors. The foot is very important, and when we're lacking in mobility through the ankles, through the feet, then that's going to radiate up your kinetic chain in ways that you might not expect. And so that functional ankle and foot stability and strength are vital to anyone who moves. I mean, whether you're going for walks on a daily basis, you're walking upstairs, getting in and out of your car, all of these things require foot strength and stability, both through the foot and the ankle. So the other thing that I like to do in self-assessment is to actually just look at how my feet move and how they sit on the ground. How do they handle ground reactive forces? How do they stabilize on the ground? I, of course, have this collapsed arch. But you'll notice if I pick my foot up, I have an arch. That's how I know that when I put my foot on the ground and it collapses, I know it's collapsed. And for me, with this collapsed arch, what that means for me in many instances is that I have a weak posterior tibialis, which is a muscle that a lot of people don't think about, but that muscle plays an important role in that medial arch. And so for me, when I do more work on my posterior tibialis, which is this muscle that kind of wraps around, it's here and it wraps around to the outside, and it's just behind your calves, your calf muscles, your gastrocnemius and soleus, and it works to the opposite of your anterior tibialis, which is very important if you're somebody that is lacking in dorsiflexion, or you have a really hard time getting down on the ground and lifting those toes off the ground like so. Then we're gonna need to do some work to strengthen this anterior tib, okay? Whereas if you're somebody who struggles with plantar flexion and what we call inversion, where that foot, the bottom of the foot is rotating outward, then we're looking at more of a posterior tib issue. And I'm gonna show you a couple of exercises for both of those issues. And then I also wanna show you some exercises for general foot strength, because strong, stable feet are so important. And you can check that by just doing some simple toe yoga. So having your feet flat on the ground, and I'm gonna lift my toe off the ground, and then I'm gonna lift my big toes off the ground, and then I'm gonna lift my little toes off the ground, pressing my big toes into the floor. And if this is something that you struggle with, okay, maintaining pressure at 3 points from right here, this big meaty part on the inside of your foot, to this outside, just at the back of your pinky toe and through your heel. We want to maintain those 3 points of contact. And if that's difficult, or if it's difficult for you to draw your foot up into that good arch, we've really got to work on that overall foot strength. And there's a lot more to that, but I'm trying to keep this really general. We're not diagnosing, we're not trying to give a specific name to what's happening with your feet, but I want you to just become more self-aware so that when issues arise, you have some basic tools to go to as a first measure of success when we go to try and get back to performance, get back to reversing those painful issues as they arise. Okay, so just some easy ways to self-assess. And let's go into some exercises for those anterior and posterior tibs. All right, I'm a big fan of the Mantis sticks. These were created by my buddy Kurt Liggett of Roundbox Fitness. I will make sure to link in the description where you can get these. They're very affordable, they're so useful, and I'll be demonstrating a lot of workouts and exercises that you can use at home for corrective work and for general strength, okay? Powerful tool. And we're gonna use just one of them for right now. And I'm gonna take you through first a really powerful post-tib exercise, also general calf strengthening, because the post-tib tends to turn on whenever we're doing calf strengthening work, but we can further target it by positioning our body in just the right way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push my knee forward, okay, and I'm gonna put downward pressure with this mantis stick, okay? And what I'm gonna do to isolate that post-tib, the post-tib helps with plantar flexion and what we call inversion, which when we really focus on that big toe in a calf raise, that's gonna happen because that post-tib wraps around laterally or to the side a little bit through the calves, okay, or through the side of our leg. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna push my knee forward, so I'm coming forward into dorsiflexion, right? And I'm going to really focus on that big toe. I'm gonna put pressure down on that knee, and I'm nice and slow and controlled gonna come up, really thinking about inversion and plantar flexion, and then nice and slow come down. And I'm gonna breathe. And you can see I'm already shaking. Powerful exercise. And that calf stretch with raise is also a very powerful exercise for post-tib. So you're getting two exercises that I'm showing you in this video. The other one I like because it gets us into that stretched, elongated position, which is really powerful when we're needing to release. And then this is a really great strengthening exercise. But you can get that lengthening component out of this as well by putting your foot up on a wedge or a block. This is also a product by Roundbox Fitness, but other wedges obviously work as well. But that's gonna get me into even more of an elongated position and into some deeper dorsiflexion. And then I'm just gonna do the same thing. Pressure down. So it just depends on where you're at and how much mobility you have, but that's something that you can use to progress over time. Now, for the anterior tib, we've got a couple of options here. And I really like to utilize a step. It's generally best to wear shoes for this, but you're gonna place this mantis stick, the end of it, along just behind your big toe, okay? And your other toes. Okay, and from here, I'm gonna apply some resistance and I'm gonna come up. Slow and controlled down and up. So like I said before, it's more comfortable in shoes, but this way I'm getting elongated and I'm working on strengthening those tibs, nice and slow and controlled. 8 to 10 to 15 is a great place to start. My other favorite exercise for anterior tibialis is using one of these ramps, but you could also wrap a band around any stable surface to do this. And so again, I've got that band wrapped around my midfoot and I'm going to keep my knee soft. So I'm really focusing on these anterior tibs that run down my shin. Nice and slow and controlled. And here I can increase the difficulty based on the resistance that I have with that band. Makes it very adjustable. The last thing I want to do is I want to take you through some really great just general foot strength exercises that you can utilize. If you're just having general foot dysfunction, you're having some plantar fasciitis issues, bottom of the foot pain, this even comes into play with lateral foot issues as well. So the first thing we're going to do is wake up the fascia on the bottom of your feet. And this is a lacrosse ball. My favorite balls are the spiky ones. I can't find mine right this moment, but you can get them on Amazon real cheap. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna roll along the bottom of my foot for 30 seconds or so, 30 seconds to a minute. And if you have one foot that's a problem over the other, you can absolutely do this all on just the one affected side. That is generally what I do. I have most of my issues on my left side, which is really common. And I'll get into that more in future videos, why that is so common and what you can do, because these foot issues, we're also gonna see common things that pop up as we assess up through the knee and especially through the hip, because oftentimes when we have foot issues here on one side, we're gonna see a correlating pattern through the glute and the hip as well. But we'll get into that in future videos with assessment and so forth. So I'm gonna roll out the bottoms of my feet. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work on what we often call screwing into the floor, okay? And I wanna think about a tripod of pressure through my feet. So the meaty part behind my big toes, meaty part behind my pinky toes, and my heel. So I'm gonna get that nice contact with my feet, tripod of pressure. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna draw my arches up and I'm gonna pull my pressure as much to the outsides of my feet as I can while maintaining that tripod of pressure. What I don't want you to do is pull all the way up into what we call supination, hanging out on the outsides of your feet. Keep that tripod and just pull to the outsides, the lateral sides of your feet as much as you can. And then we're gonna pull to the inside toward pronation, leaning to the insides as much as we can. And you're gonna go back and forth. And this is gonna help you, a really good warm-up exercise if you're doing any heavy lifting, squats, etc., because this is gonna help you with that cue to screw your feet into the floor, to push away from the floor or into it, okay? So we can work with the ground and with our feet and maintain that good pressure. Now, once I do that for about a minute, then I'm going to do some toe yoga. So I'm gonna lift up my big toes, pressing my little toes into the ground, and then the opposite, big toe presses into the ground. So nice and slow, maintaining that tripod of pressure. And I'll do 8 to 10 here, okay? And then the last exercise that I'm gonna show you is a shuffle. I love this exercise, I'm a big fan. My feet are relatively close together and I'm gonna go out to the side and I'm gonna pick up and then shift my heels out. And I'll generally do about 10 one direction and then I'll go 10-ish the other direction. Okay? And then other exercises that I utilize are just very case dependent. So if you're somebody who needs a little bit more, you're not too sure about going through this assessment on your own, shoot me a message. I've got my link to schedule a complimentary call with me, my gift to you. We can chat about what's going on and see what I can do for you. I do all of these assessments virtually through Zoom, and I'm always happy to do that, hop on a call and see whether that would be a good fit for you. So till next time, talk to you later, guys.